I'm Thomas from My Way Language Courses, and today's video is for all of you who do their maturità exam this month, especially the oral one. The reason why we decided to make this video is to give you some tips on how to prepare and how to approach this exam, because like any other exam, there are some techniques, right? There are some ways which you can use to do well in this exam, how to approach it well in order to get good results and to make it in a way easier for yourself, because we don't like making things more difficult than they need to be, right? So the problem I see among many students is that once they know their topic, they get their piece of paper, sit down and start writing. What they write is kind of an essay approach writing when they start writing long sentences, right? And in the end, they end up with a sheet or two of a text, of a long text with no paragraphs, no points, and so on. This might be quite confusing, because if you imagine you've got such thing and then the time comes when you're supposed to present your ideas, to present your knowledge, whatever you know, then what you see is a sheet like that. And okay, what do I start with? What happens is that people tend to read it, right? But then it's not a reading part of maturità. They are not assessing your reading skills. They want you to speak. So if you read a sheet or two, it wouldn't be appropriate. So then what happens, you get confused, you get a bit nervous, and you try to look at them, you look at your sheet, look at them, and so on. And then what happens is that you get lost in your notes, and you forget to say lots of things you wanted to say, but which were originally on that sheet, right? So this is what usually happens. And anyways, today I want to give you some tips how to make it easier for yourself and hopefully how to get better results in the actual exam. Right, so let's have a look how to do that. So let's say the topic is USA, the United States of America, right? So this is the topic you have chosen. Now you need to think, right, what do I know about the States? Again, don't just start writing long sentences. The approach I'm going to show you here, it's got many names. We can call it a spidergram, we can call it a mind map. And the key thing is that you kind of brainstorm all the ideas that you might know and that you might use for this particular topic. So if we look at the United States of America, what are some of the things we can talk about? Right? There is a lot to talk about. Again, there is a time limit, so you can't talk about everything. But some of the things we could mention, alright, why not to talk about history? Right? Let's mention something about history. Next thing, we could talk about some facts. Facts about the USA, like how many states are there within the Union, what are the languages that people speak, what is the climate like, and so on. So that could be among this one. Then we could talk about, right, what's important? Politics, right? Everyone talks about that. So let's mention politics. Politics, the government, how is it divided? Who's in the executive power, and so on. So that's another thing we could possibly mention. Okay, let's do a bit more, so one or two. So the next one, maybe we could mention, a good one to mention for any topic, if you talk about countries in general, is culture. Right, because what is culture? Culture is everything. Culture are the people, the citizens of each country. Culture is the food that we eat. Culture is the music we listen to. Culture are the films we go to watch in cinemas and on TV and so on. So in culture, you can talk about pretty much anything, and it tends to be quite interesting as well. I'll give you one more point, which I think is good to talk about. It's easier for students, and it's mainly because it's your own experience. You know, the thing is that everything you have experienced yourself is much easier to talk about. So if you've actually visited the USA, again, don't be afraid to talk about it. Tell the teachers, tell them where you've been, what have you done, did you like it or not, why did you go there, who did you go with, and so on. If you haven't been there, alright, you've got family, you've got friends. Is there anyone who's actually been and you know a bit about? Okay, mention. My mother, she actually visited the USA last summer. She went to Washington and she liked it really much. Don't be afraid to talk about that. Or, if you haven't experienced it yourself, if you don't have anyone in your group of friends or family that would have this experience, then what you could talk about is whether you would love to visit the USA one day or not. If yes, why? What are the things you like about the country? What are the things you are interested in? If not, again, say, what's your problem? Why don't you like it? Why are you not thinking of visiting this country at all? Again, tell them what you think, how you feel, right? It's fine. Good, so you can see, in the first step, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, right? So now we know when the time comes and you come say, hello, my today's topic, it's the USA. You know that the first one you're going to talk about is history. So, good day. Firstly, I'd like to mention something about the history of the USA. You know, second, I'll move to some facts about the country. Thirdly, I'll talk about the culture of the USA. And so on. So it's nicely divided and you know what you want to talk about in each step. So then the history. I don't want to make it too long, but again, history of the USA is not that long, but at the same time there is quite a lot to talk about, and you have to bear in mind that there is a time limit and you can't talk for hours. So you always try to think, alright, what are the most important things that happened in the history I like to mention here, and I know about quite a bit, so I can say something, or in case they ask me more questions, I'll be able to answer them. So what I feel is quite important in the history of the United States could be July 1776, which was the month, it was just the year, when they gained independence on the Great Britain, right? So this is the first thing you could say. And then you can actually write it here, it's not a problem. But again, in one sentence. The next one we could mention 1861 to 1865, which was a civil war, you know, between the South, 11 southern countries. They were slave-keeping countries, and they decided to separate from the United States and kind of make their own group of states, which was called Confederate States of America. So North against the South, right? That's another thing you can mention. Another one quite important in the history of the United States could be World War II. So again, July 1941, that was the month, that was the year when the USA kind of entered into World War II. When? What happened? After the attack in Pearl Harbor, when they had the naval base and Japanese attacked it. So that's another thing you could mention. And again, in 1 or 2 sentences. Enough. Alright, let me give you one more. Another one, quite recent one, I think we all remember, could be 9/11. So in September 2001, that was the year, that was the month when the USA and, well, they say the whole world suffered the terrorist attack from Al-Qaeda when they attacked World Trade Towers, the Twins in New York, and also the Pentagon in Washington. Right, so we've got 4 things you could mention. So then when you look at it, you've got the dates, you can write a bit about it. So just when you look at it, you know, alright, this is what I want to mention. And you don't need to kind of search for it in your long text. If you got it like this, you know exactly what the dates are, and you know what you like to say, what you like to mention. Alright, let me give you one more. Which one could we talk about? Let's talk about some facts, right, about the United States. That could be the first thing, or the second thing you mention after the history. So, you know, it's United States, so it means it's a union of more states. The United States of America is a federal state, and it consists of 50 states and a federal district of Columbia. A federal district of Columbia. So again, you just write it down like this. Another thing you could mention, we talked about languages, right? So official language. Official language is obviously English. Some of the Americans will tell you that they speak American, but don't get me wrong, it's English. You can say they speak American English, but they don't speak American. Another highly spoken language is Spanish, right? Why Spanish? Because one of the bordering countries with the United States is Mexico, in the south. And there are lots of Mexican immigrants living in the United States. There are lots of South American immigrants living in the United States. So that's why you can hear Spanish, especially in the southern part of the country, quite a lot. So you could mention that. We mentioned Mexico, right? That's a bordering country. So the United States of America borders with 2 countries. South, Mexico, North, Canada. So that's another thing you could mention. So, okay, let's just put a note there. And so on. There are more things you could talk about. So it's really up to you. But what I wanted to show you here is that if you approach it in this particular way, you make it much more easily presentable to the group of teachers, and it will be much easier for you to kind of remember what you wanted to talk about and so on. So first step, whatever, you write the topic. Second, you know, the key points which you like to talk about, like history, facts, politics, and so on. And then in the third step, what you do is that you are more specific about the topics you kind of have here, like we did in these examples about the history and facts. So yeah, whatever the topic is, obviously there are more, you can approach it in this way, and trust me, it will just be much better for you. So anyways, that's all from me now. I hope you found it interesting. I'll give you some examples which you can use as well. If you've got any questions, don't be afraid to message me. I'll be more than happy to answer you.